Rwanda, a nation torn. This is the story of the 1994 genocide. Rwanda, a small yet strikingly beautiful country in East Africa, often referred to as the Land of a Thousand Hills, has a long history of rich culture and stunning natural landscapes. However, beneath its scenic terrain lies a harrowing chapter in human history, the Rwandan genocide of 1994. In just 100 days, from April to July 1994, an estimated 800,000 to 1 million people, primarily Tutsi, along with moderate Hutu and others, were slaughtered in a brutal orchestrated campaign of mass murder. This is the story of how it started, how it unfolded, and how it ended. Colonial legacy and ethnic stratification. Rwanda's population historically consisted of three major ethnic groups: Yi, Hutu, approximately 85%; Tutsi, approximately 14%; Tuwa, approximately 1%. Before colonialism, these groups were more social classes than distinct ethnicities. Tutsis were generally wealthier, owning more cattle, while Hutus were mostly agriculturalists. There was intermarriage, social mobility, and relatively peaceful coexistence. However, German and then Belgian colonial rulers deepened divisions by favoring the Tutsi minority. Belgians issued ethnic identity cards and placed Tutsis in administrative positions, while marginalizing the Hutu majority. This sowed long-term resentment. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, Hutu resistance had grown. In 1959, a revolution led by Hutus overthrew the Tutsi monarchy. Rwanda gained independence from Belgium in 1962, and a series of Hutu-led governments came to power. Tutsis became targets of state-sponsored discrimination and recurring violence, often being massacred or exiled. Hundreds of thousands of Tutsis fled to neighboring countries like Uganda, Burundi, and Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In the 1980s, Tutsi exiles in Uganda formed the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, a political and military organization seeking the right to return home and participate in governance. In 1990, the RPF invaded Rwanda from Uganda, starting a civil war. President Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu who had ruled since 1973, responded with force, and the government intensified propaganda portraying Tutsis as a threat. The early 1990s saw a rise in Hutu power ideology, promoted by hardliners within the ruling elite. Propaganda painted all Tutsis as enemies. The infamous radio station Radio Television Libre des Mille Collines, RTLM, incited hatred using dehumanizing language, referring to Tutsis as cockroaches. Militias such as the Interahamwe, backed by the government and trained in secret, prepared for mass violence. In 1993, international pressure led to the signing of the Arusha Accords between the Rwandan government and the RPF, aimed at power sharing. However, Hutu extremists viewed the agreement as a betrayal and began planning the extermination of Tutsis and moderate Hutus. On April 6, 1994, President Habyarimana's plane was shot down over Kigali, killing him and the president of Burundi. The perpetrators of the assassination remain unknown, but Hutu extremists blamed the RPF. Within hours, the genocide began. Moderate politicians were the first to be assassinated, including Prime Minister Agatha Uwilingiyimana. UN peacekeepers, UNAMIR, led by Canadian General Romeo Dallaire, were powerless under strict mandates and were later withdrawn after the murder of 10 Belgian soldiers. From April to July 1994, Rwanda descended into chaos. Roadblocks were set up, and Tutsis were identified by ID cards and executed on the spot. Churches, schools, and hospitals, places where people sought refuge, became mass killing sites. Neighbors turned on neighbors, families were wiped out, women were raped, and children were butchered. The genocide was meticulously planned. Lists of Tutsis were prepared. Arms were distributed to militias. That's so. State-run media directed killings in real time. And the international community, including the United Nations and powerful nations like the US and France, largely stood by. The world hesitated to call it genocide, fearing political and legal obligations to intervene. While the international community debated, the Rwandan Patriotic Front resumed its military campaign. Led by Paul Kagame, the RPF advanced from the north and east, slowly taking over the country. By mid-July 1994, the RPF had seized Kigali and effectively ended the genocide. The killers, government officials, and militias fled en masse to Zaire, now DRC, along with over 2 million Hutu civilians, sparking a massive refugee crisis. Then, over 1 million people dead, mass graves and trauma across the nation, a collapsed economy and devastated infrastructure. Paul Kagame became de facto leader and later president. The RPF-led government prioritized stability, justice, and unity. However, freedom of speech and political dissent remain sensitive issues, and Kagame's long rule has drawn criticism for authoritarian tendencies. The Rwandan genocide stands as one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. It reminds us of the consequences of hatred, propaganda, and silence in the face of evil. Yet Rwanda also symbolizes the resilience of the human spirit, the power of reconciliation, and the determination to rise again. The words "never again" echo through the country, not just as a slogan, but as a vow etched into the soul of a nation that has seen the depths of darkness and chosen to walk toward the light. Thank you. Please do well to subscribe for more